And we're live with Darren Jacobic, Dr. Jacobic, coming in from Canada, British Columbia, little town of Smithers. Welcome, Jake. Good to have you.
Thanks, Bill. Good to be here. This is number 2 for us.
Yeah, this is number 2. This is the People of the Dream channel. I'm Bill St. Cyr, and Jake's back by popular demand. Good to have you, Jake. So, do you want to start with the conversation? We were going to talk about inner world, outer world, how to talk about dreams in the context of what does it mean to have an inner world? What does it mean to have a dream life? How is that different than the way we normally perceive the world? Or at least that's how I was thinking about it.
Yeah, we did get some feedback, and I'm constantly aware of the words I'm using and trying to how do we word what we do with dreams and what does inner work mean? And I'm happy to start with that and go from there because context for those of us who follow their dreams, I think it's probably easier, but even then we lose people. So yes, I'd like to start there, Bill.
Okay. I mean, do you want to say something about it or do you want me to launch?
You launch, you start.
I guess on the simplest level, it maybe starts with an emotional inner world, like an emotional life, realizing that it's not just about how I think about things, it's how I experience things on an emotional level. Like, what am I feeling? Am I excited to be here? Is this fun? Is it sad? Am I in pain? I think on a very basic level, my understanding of the inner world or the idea of an inner world began in a way with an understanding of feelings. Beyond that, it kind of expanded on a more spiritual level of just kind of understanding that there is consciousness that lives within us. There's ways of being with things beyond what we do, beyond everything that happens. We have our own relationship with what happens. And when I talk about inner realm, I'm just talking about what is my experience of what's happening around me? That would be another way for me to say it. Does that resonate for you?
It does. And the context, once again, to ground this in context, how does honoring an inner world or how does working with dreams or a similar reflective thing help us? It helps us to know there's a cognitive realm where we have our tangible daily lives and events and tasks that we need to do. And there's something I've roughly awkwardly called the inner world, which is our emotional state, our body awareness, our spiritual state, which defies words for me, but that embodiment of feelings and processes that we get dissociated from. Dissociated is another word that's come up a number of times that people have brought up. That separation, and if we don't walk with at least these two awarenesses, that there's a cognitive reality and a physical reality and a three-dimensional reality that we have to live in, and there's this emotional feeling bodily experienced reality that we have to live in. And the more we can live in both, the more satisfying, joyful, happy, fulfilling life can be, is what my dreams have taught me and what various modalities of treatments have taught me. So I'm agreeing with you, and you can use the word feelings, you can use the word, but the other thing that can come into this, I mean, there's so many things that can come into it is body awareness and feeling into dreams can bring you a body awareness, and when you which can help with those feelings. And if you're not aware of your body, it's hard to function in this world in a fulfilling way. So we often ask people to feel into their dreams and bring a body awareness to the moment in the dream. And many dream workers I know have included a body awareness aspect, even a touching or a massage or a therapeutic touch or if not just a cognitive, just slow things down and notice your body and where is your body holding that and can we actually feel that? And somehow, in a way that's hard to put to words, that translates to a more aware life and a more fulfilling life and a more intuitive and insightful way of being in the world. Is that oversimplifying things? Is that
I don't think so. Part of what's hard, I think, is that we're talking about things that are complex because of our experience. So for me, my relationship to my feelings was really limited for a lot of my life. So there's this complex history. But then on another level, these are very simple, basic experiences that we're talking about. I don't think it's oversimplification. Sometimes for me, when I'm working with people, I'll just be like, how is it to take, like, what comes up for you if you take a breath into that moment in the dream? So, like, a lot of times for me, the somatic piece has to do with breath because all of us, we have, I mean, even I do this. I'll wake up from a dream and immediately I'll start thinking about it. And it's a different thing to just like, how is it to take a breath and just be with that experience? How do you be with oneself? This is where the inner world comes in. It's not just like, oh, this dream happening, there's this life happening, but what's happening for me in relationship to it? What's happening in my body? What's happening in my thoughts? What's just like my general experience of what's happening around me as opposed to just the happening, which is I think where most of the world we're taught to focus.
yes. And you can't ignore that because that's real.
Exactly. So, right. Like one of the things that's hard to avoid is like the either or. It's not about inner world over outer world. It's how do we be with the outer world from a grounded place, embodied in the way that you're talking about it, conscious, on a spiritual level. How do we be in a soulful place if you're comfortable with that language in relationship to the world around us? Um,
So examples. Examples are
Yeah,
good though.
well, I was thinking about my very first dream. Like, I had this dream where there were these boys underwater. And again, this is like an outer world experience. I'm like, they're drowning. I need to save them. The whole first experience of the dream is all from that. It's a normal reaction, right? You see kids underwater, you think they're drowning. But when I worked with that dream from the place of like being one of the boys in the water, it was like somebody gave me a dose of mushrooms or something. I had a different experience of the whole moment because I felt there was no panic. There was one, I wasn't drowning. I was somehow like some kind of fish in the water or something. Again, on a spiritual level, I was living, part of me is living in the realm of water, whatever that means. But mostly, the most visceral part of it is there was no anxiety. I didn't need to be saved. Bill up on the boardwalk had this whole idea that I needed to be saved. And I think that was an energy I carried around a lot. I think there's vestiges of that I still work with, like this idea that I need to be saved or I need to be helped or I need to be fixed are all things that go way back in my life. Not being a good enough Catholic, not being a good enough person, not being a good enough man. There was always something that I could try to be doing better. And the idea that I could just be and experience in myself and be at peace, that's a pretty good example for me of that that's a kind of inner peace that hopefully then manifests as being also like how I move through the world.
So you're kind of answering it. So but just for context to tell people like how has what you've just explained made your life better?
I think part of what I learned to do is notice the places in my life where am I trying to save somebody. So in those days, I was still doing a lot of political work. What would it be like for me to be in the world and not feel? I mean, this was after the wars in El Salvador, but I got involved in a lot of anti-war work around the wars in Central America. But I just always was trying to save myself also. Like, I think it was a kind of shame that I carried. So I felt in a way like I was never good enough, never smart enough, never attractive enough. And I think feeling this place inside myself made me feel okay with myself. It made me feel, I mean, it's a long process. I don't want to pretend I had that one dream and suddenly all my shame issues were gone, but it launched me on a road where I'm not always measuring myself by the culture's standards, where I felt a kind of peace inside of myself that I carry to this day. I could still, like, sometimes I joke is like, if I just worked that one dream my whole life, that would be something for me. That would change my life. It did change my life. Did that answer the question?
It did, um, but even more specific is even better. Like, how does it help your relationships? How does it help your job?
Yeah, I
How
was
does it
going to
help
go to
your health?
relationship. Well, I mean, obviously, I'm a practitioner and therapist, so I have to like resist the urge to save people, right? I have to like learn how to be present with people and bring attention to people without my own preconceived idea that people need to be fixed or saved. And I think it made me redefine my relationship to relationships in general. Like, I think I wanted to be saved. I think I wanted to find love in relationship, for example. If someone loved me enough, I would be okay. If I loved somebody enough for them to love me, that used to, in a way, be my formula for relationship when I first learned how to be in relationship. Was like, if I love this person enough, then they'll love me enough back that I'll get the love that I need. And I think it's a really different way of being in relationship to learn to bring that kind of love to the relationship regardless of what you get back or not. And it really changes things a lot. I mean, my current marriage, this isn't my first, is very different. Like, there's a kind of love that's I wouldn't have even recognized as love in my previous marriage. I like would not have even known that this is what love was, because I thought love was about some kind of exchange and getting something and feeling something. And with Sue and I, it's more like we share a kind of love. We share a presence with each other on the good days, at least, but even in the bad days, we are with each other. We're present with each other as best we know how. There's kind of a grounding to it all that's very different than my relationships used to be like a roller coaster. When they were good, they were great. And when they weren't good, it felt like the end of the world in some way. And that might be a little bit of an exaggeration, but there were times it was like that.
Makes me think of roller coaster dreams and how common they are sometimes. There's also something you're saying reminds me of there's a Jane's Addiction song called Jane Says, and some of the lyrics, it's a great song. One of the lyrics is Jane, I say she doesn't know what love is. All she knows is if someone wants her, she wants them if they want her.
Mm. Yeah, I
It's
relate to that totally.
it's a great line from that song. And yeah, if you're defined by other people and you're not grounded in who you are and you need to save or you don't know where you're coming or going, you just react to what other people give in your world. And certainly your story resonates with me too. My saving, if there's a karma, if there's a past life, if there's a something. My first dreams, my first retreat, all three dreams, there was a common theme of I can't save them. And on some level, it's like I
There
remember
was
the
like
bird.
military dreams. You couldn't save your
There was military, but before the military dreams, I remember there was a round church. I don't think you were there for this dream. There was
nah.
a round church and two floors, and upstairs the floor was black and white checkers, which I just get up in your head. You're thinking in black and white, and as metaphor. And there's a bunch of people, and suddenly I'm outside the church, and and it burns down, and the facilitator says, "So what's the feeling?" The feeling is I can't save them. And of course, my black and white thinking is being burnt away, and fire is a horrible thing, but a force for renewal and passion, etc. But how it made me realize, I become a doctor, I become an anesthetist, I do resuscitation and neonatal resuscitation and every resuscitation course I can and then working with dreams to try and save people and having it known in that moment that you can't it's just painful. You can't save everything, and on some level, you need to save yourself. And how that shifted my perspective to see how I was run my inner world, to go back to languages. My inner world was telling me to save things. My outer world, I had a job and I thought this was the right job to do. And but in the meantime, I was spending less time with my spouse, less time with my kids, less time on my personal health, more time on bad habits, partly because that inner drive, that inner world that I was completely unaware of, I didn't have a language for it, was driving me to think I needed to save people. And it just drove me. And I was, until that moment, until I'd worked with those dreams, like 3 in a row in different scenarios, and there was one more military one, and there was one more that I can't save people, like 3 of them, and the common feeling was I can't save them. 3 completely different dreams, which is
Yeah.
often true in people's dreams. There'll be a golf dream, a sitcom dream, a spouse dream, a work dream. You'll say, "What's the feeling?" And the feeling's the same. And so in my scenario, it kinda lines up to similar to your journey. Don't don't think you're saving things, Jacobek. Don't. I like to tell my medical students and residents I work with, it's like our job isn't to save people. That's the spiritual realm. The church, in theory, your relationship with what you might call God, but we do have a role in extending people's lives and comforting, and that's valuable. And let's take that role seriously, but don't roll over into thinking you're saving anybody. And certainly it's personal, but I see, whether it's just karma or fate or the natural tendency for people to get into doctors, nursing, healthcare aides, physios, ambulance attendant, whatever,
Dream
everybody in this field.
practitioners, dream
Dream
practitioners.
practitioners
It's,
that
it's interesting. We're both in, you know, professions that are, at least on some level, people think of as places where you save people.
right. Yeah. And so how it's helped my life, as I've seen that energy, I saw it for what it is, and I've had to feel grief and tears and sadness and sorrow for, honestly, all the people I couldn't save, all the parts of myself I couldn't save, all the parts of my past I couldn't save, all the things around me that I can't save. That comes with grief, and I was unwilling to feel that grief. So, the only way through it is to feel it in a way, and you can't. What do those words even mean? Who's going to make you feel that? Well, your dreams do. So, if you're willing to open that door, your dreams will bring the body awareness, the grief, the sadness, the sorrow, and it'll show up in nightmares. It'll show up in all of the things you haven't felt. So, dreams are one modality by, as difficult as it may be, whether you acknowledge them or not, you process things. And then once I let that go, suddenly I'm more present for my marriage. Suddenly I'm more present for my kids, my coworkers. It pops into my head that, hey, maybe I should, you know, call a friend or do something fun or take care of my own needs. And suddenly that inner world that I was unaware of isn't driving me as much the
Right.
more I learn to feel. So
Well, there's a physical relationship, right? Because saving is always about, like, oh, I'm going to save this person. This is the whole outer world, inner world thing, right? Like, it's all about, I'm going to save, that person over there. And it's a different thing to be in the world, like, physically it's not like you're stepped out of the world, but your relationship to it is different. My relationship to it is different
yeah.
anyway. Like, I used to have
Even
much
as you're
worse. I
speaking,
used
I
to
think of the Buddhist being versus doing. Even your emotions with the hand, you're doing, and so many Buddhist
exactly.
phrases are, "Can you just be with it and not do?" And exactly what you're saying is what I'm just getting this imagery as you're speaking. Like, you go to save, it's like there's almost this hand going out gesture of, can you just be with the suffering? And, like, it's human nature to want to do something, but how much is human nature and how much is it is this pointless drive that you think you're helping when you're actually not helping?
Right.
Or
Oh,
the
for me,
biblical give a man a fish or teach him to fish sort of thing. Like, are
yeah.
you really helping? Are you yeah.
Well, and I think it creates a different kind of presence and love and relationship also, because when I was doing it from the place of saving people, I acted like I was doing it for them. Like, again, there was that forward energy, or this is all about you. But in a way, I was doing it because I wanted credit or something for saving people. I wanted like, oh, I'm worthy if I save somebody. And it's a very different way of it's I think people feel that. My exes felt that for sure. Nobody None of my exes ever wanted me to fix them or save them. As much as like I thought I was trying to be helpful, it was a hard lesson for me of like, that doesn't feel helpful, you know? And
Yes.
that was like some serious humble pie, and it was good for me. It was good because it wasn't good for me either. Like, it's not a good way to live. Um, I think of what Simone said about joy. I don't know I'm just thinking of the word joy in Simone.
Yeah,
Your
Simone
uh,
said, good colleague who looks at her dreams also. Hi to Simone out there if you
Hi,
listen to this.
Simone.
Um, it says allowing joy and happiness and permission to have that joy and happiness in your life is one of the things she's learned through dreams and continues to learn through dreams from what I mean, knowing her a little bit and her telling me her stories as well. And for sure that I remember in my own dreams as well when something good happens, when you're focused on what's difficult all the time and when something good comes along, are you willing to let that in? Sounds ridiculous. It sounds absolutely ridiculous. It reminds me of the Nietzsche quotes of when you stare into the abyss, be careful, like the abyss stares back into you, or when you deal with monsters, it's like you focus on what's difficult. And it's a very setup in the medical field or in the emergency medicine field. You constantly see difficult things. So
Yeah,
but you can outside of the emergency room, you can focus on negative news, you can focus on the tragedies constantly, and how's that good for your marriage? Like, how does that bring joy into your marriage or your life or your parenting or your community when you can't separate the 2? Um, and certainly I had a hard time separating those 2, but
yeah.
I feel like I'm a bit scattered here, Bill. Can you
That's okay.
make
I'm happy to pick up. It makes me wonder what Simone, what your idea of joy is. I'd love to hear it. Maybe you can write to us and we can talk about it more next time. But it's hard to feel like if you think of joy as something that arises again from within oneself, as opposed to like partying, it's like, oh, I feel joy when I'm partying or I'm drinking or I'm eating, like if you think of joy as like this thing that arises, like when I'm trying to save somebody, it's hard to feel joy. There's like that moment of elation that I used to feel. It was like this drug of like, oh, I helped somebody, I'm worthy, I'm happy. There was a hit of some kind of joy maybe, but I'm assuming when Simone's talking about it in that way that you're really talking about a different kind of joy, which is like more like this thing that just bubbles up. It's just like, oh, life is good. It's not like life is good if I have a couple of beers. It's like life is good regardless, or it's not. There's joy. There's like you were talking about grief earlier. Like there's a fluidity of like being able to grieve what's painful, letting that also move through me fully, and then being able to also be with joy and love in this whole other way that comes. I guess it is kind of pretty hard to find words for. Like it just comes. What does that mean? That comes from inside myself. I feel almost embarrassed to say it that way, but that is how I experience. I experience a very different kind of joy when I'm in myself in the way that we're talking about. It's different than like, oh, I'm happy because this happened,
right.
you
It
know?
it interesting this brings up 2 things. One of the things when a child shows up, like I worked with somebody's dreams for a couple of years, and it was only after 2 years that a child showed up. Like, you can have joy as an adult, but you see kids enjoy and they embody you see a 2-year-old screaming around, like, that is joy. I mean, you see a 6-year-old dancing, that is joy. And when it comes in your dreams or you get people to feel into those moments in their dreams, it's like they're showing them how when they can find that inner child, cliche counseling word, but actually shows up in dreams as a child in your inner journey, it can help and has helped me capture that. I say, well, there's a child dancing in your dreams. Like, can you feel what it's like to be that child? And it's amazing. People have a hard time doing it or they resist it because they're not literally or metaphorically dancing in their world, but there's that resistance of joy. And just even to have the conversation, can you dance? Are you willing to dance? Literally, or like however that looks in your world. And another thing I think Simone brought up as well was the just the word nourishment. And we could talk a lot about this in dreams. I remember, yeah, if you're willing to accept the food, there's a lot of biblical metaphors here too. If
Yeah.
you're willing to accept the food, the joy that comes with that, but that resistance to eat, which I think is, I prefer the word nourishment.
Yeah.
A number of my dreams where there was a number of cafeteria dreams, and so while I'm in the cafeteria and somebody eventually this cafeteria worker in the back gently pushes out a bowl of broth. It's and Sue was talking about this too. Like it often starts with broth or root vegetables, beets, potatoes, onions, and then like slowly goes up to towards meat or whatever your equivalent of meat is. But
Soybeans.
it's exactly. But it often starts, are you willing to take the broth? Or are you willing to nourish yourself? And from that comes joy. And that's a hard, like that's an inner journey thing that manifests. How do you bring that? It's like, what the heck does that even mean? But until you work with it, until you see the metaphor, until you see it over and over, like we've seen it in dreams, it's like this person's finally willing to bite into the world, and this person's finally willing to nourish themselves, take care of their own needs, not take care of other person's needs.
Yeah.
And I've seen Simone just dig into a great pastry. Bless Simone, she's funny. Like, I'm gonna enjoy this.
You're making me hungry now.
And just like joie de vivre, how do you recapture that joie de vivre when life has beaten you down, or enough traumas or enough inner problems have been your focus? And how do you break out of that to find joy? And dreams are a modality which I'm determined does it, if you're
Yeah.
willing to pay attention. Are you with me, Bill?
Well, yeah, for sure. Like, I think what they do is they give us a place to play around with things. Like you said, we don't have words for it, partly because these are experiences that we don't, that get lost in our culture, get lost in our upbringing. You know, so much of my parents' experience, God bless them, was about just like, how do you get through the day? You know, they had 8 kids. How do you get through the day? How do you get food on the table? How do you get the house clean? You know, there wasn't space there hasn't been a lot of space in a lot of people's lives to be able to like have that kind of joy of a child as an adult. You know,
Mhm,
I think it's part of the reason people drink so much is because, well, if I have a few drinks and I'll get a dose of it, you know, but it's a different thing to be like, can I, can I take an experience from a dream and can I learn to like breathe into that and embody it and know that it's a part of who I am? In almost like a prayer, can I, or a meditation or a practice, can I like touch back into that memory and elicit that feeling in my day-to-day life? This is what you're talking about like, well, how does it help? It's like, well, it
mhm,
only helps if we know how to take those experiences and actually take a breath and be like, okay, can I feel that now? You know, can I be with that now? I had this really sweet dream about being with this older man in the woods, and he was doing this kind of like creating this creation in the woods, like doing ropes between these different trees, and it had this very like spiritual context feeling to it. I don't know about the context. And in the session, you know, my person was just like, well, how is it to be with this man, this older man? And it was like, it, it may not make sense from the outside, but it like it almost immediately brought tears to my eyes, like, because I felt this person's presence. And I don't know what that means. Is that God's presence? Is that archetype's presence? Is that some inner elder of my own? But I was so hungry for like having this elder in whatever this spiritual creation he was making. And I've been doing that at night, as I've gotten older, it's harder to sleep. And I'll often, like, when I'm up at night and my mind's taking over a little bit, I'll just be like, okay, Bill, this is, can you take a moment? Can you be with this man? And it's funny because I don't always go to sleep right away, but my nervous system calms down. I'll be like, wow. Sometimes I'll actually wake up more because there's an intensity of being with the man. But then next thing I know, it's morning and I've fallen back asleep because just feeling that presence does something to my nervous system that for anyone who struggles with sleep knows that that is a really lovely feeling. And it's not just about sleep, it's about, like, even just as a man to have this older man and this feeling of like, oh, there's like this male energy mentor kind of older man that I've looked for my whole life, being able to, like, be with that even on some esoteric or spiritual level is really profound for me because that's not been my experience. I love my dad. My dad loved me, but we were so different. He didn't understand me. I didn't feel he didn't know how to stand with me in ways that, like,
So,
I
and to be
needed.
specific, you grabbed a dream moment, an image and feeling, and reenacted it and can feel it.
Yeah, I do it. It's almost like a prayer that I do it when I'm sleeping, when I'm awake and I need help, and I do it when I'm walking through my day. Like, I'll sometimes have a session where something's really hard. Somebody brings up something horrible, and I'll be like, "Oh my god, it feels so almost overwhelming," and it's so different to be with those kind of overwhelming experiences, or even just like the thing that happened here in the states yesterday with Charlie Kirk getting killed, murdered, assassinated, whatever you want to call it. It was just such a horrible moment. Like, it's just such a horrible thing in this country, the level of political violence and the level of violence in general. And there's something about having a place where, oh, I don't have to be with that all by myself. It feels very spiritual. It's like I can be with it with God, or I can be with it with this male presence. Like, it's not on me to figure out or how to process it all because I don't really know how to process it. There's so many things in this world that are happening, that I hear happening with people in my life that I couldn't possibly figure it out by myself. And there's something about like having a presence, internalizing that feeling maybe, or internalizing being with that presence that really changes my entire life, really. It's why I love this work. I think it's why people like working with me because they feel that presence. And, no matter almost what I say or do, they're like, oh, I want to be with this guy who's like, some reason I can say stuff to him. And he's just like, okay.
It's true. It is quite profound working with dreams. Some of the introductions I says, okay, sometimes there's like topics of sex and death and
Yeah.
dismemberment
Violence,
and just horrific and violent and like whatever, bring it
so
on.
much abuse.
And don't be surprised because people are feel embarrassed about those dreams. And once you out them, it's like you're dealing with way less shame. And whether it's all metaphor, whether there's some truth there, it's just a relief to share. It's one of those counseling phrases I've heard, like pain shared is pain divided. Like it's just immediately less once you share it.
Yep.
People will they'll have what they consider a nightmare, dream with difficult feelings, as I like to say. And
Yeah.
as soon as they've said it, they realize just how horrific it is. They almost didn't realize it, and then they say it out, and they hear the words come off their tongue. It's like, that's actually quite horrific. And they often pause, and it's like, oh, okay, that's difficult. But it's not like if we can be in a place of not judging, and counselors and therapists know this, like you just that non-judgmental being with. Um, yeah.
Well,
So
you
that's
must run you must run into that in the hospital too, right? Like just being with people with health problems, having to let them know about things. being with death.
Very
I
much
mean,
so. Very mu and, even in since our last conversation, I thought if we truly worked like, where I am in Canada right now, there's just from baby boomers and resource strapped and under hiring of X, Y, and Z. Like, if we truly worked in teams, like, there's nothing we're saying here that most psychologists and counselors would be surprised by. Like, that's but we often don't work in teams. I in the emergency department in my small center, like, there's no psychologist. The counselors are swamped. They're busy as heck. The psychologists are in our system expensive and only in major centers and largely underpaid and overworked and only academic, and like we don't have access to a holistic team to have here's your massage therapist, there's
yeah.
your psychologist, here's your trauma counselor, here's your EMDR, here's your like you would be so nice to have people walk into a holistic place, but the kind of but then there's me trying like, you can't save them. Somebody doesn't want this, you can't offer it to them, but ideally, in the ideal health system
It could be available.
yeah, or at least more available, and at the current place where I am in Canada at this current time, it's certainly much less available, um, but I digress. Thinking about tangible, like my job is working in the emergency room and working
Well, I don't think it's a digression because it's part like I always like to bring in the piece about the culture. It's not just personal. Like what people are dealing with on a personal level is related to the culture that we live in. There's not the resources available for most people to like get the kind of care that they need, and I think it's one of the, one of your other friends, our friends, I mean, they messaged you or you messaged them, brought up the issue of safety when you're working with dreams, starting with a place of safety. Like, w-
Laura. Hi, Laura.
Laura, like, hi, Laura. um, like a lot of people don't have the resources. Like you think about nightmares, for example, it's not just dreams with hard feelings, it's often dreams with overwhelming feelings. It's almost the nature of a nightmare that there's more feelings there than I know how to deal with. So it's not just hard feelings, but it's feelings that are so hard that I'm a little bit like, I'm not sure, I'm not sure I want to go
Mhm.
there. I'm not sure I know how to get there. And I think part of what I hope this conversation and all our work with dreams is like, how do we create a culture, not just around dreams, but around being with each other in a different way? There was just a survey here in the States, again, of like how many people had five friends, 30 years ago versus how many people have five friends nowadays. And I don't remember the exact number, but it was shocking. Like the number of people 30 years ago that said they had five friends versus the number of people nowadays that says they have five friends is the drop is like super, super dramatic. And we're
Wow.
connected with people everywhere, Facebook, Instagram, like school, work, but again, that's an outer world thing where with people on some outer world level, it's a different thing to be a friend. Being a friend is an inner world experience, right? You can't describe it, right? It's like your friends are your friends, whatever that means. It's this kind of way you and I are with each other. I count you among my friends. I count you among somebody I could talk to if I needed or I was having a hard day. I could always call Jake. I don't do that, but we text sometimes, we stay in touch
We do.
sometimes, we share, and I know you're there if I need you. I know I have a friend. And I hope that you feel the same with me. But that in itself, the whole idea of a friend in a way is an inner world thing, right? Like you can have lots of people in your
True.
life and not feel friendship.
It's true, and that's something yes, thank you. I do I do consider you a friend, Bill. Thank you, likewise.
I knew that.
It shows up in your dreams, and it shows up in your inner world, and it shows up how people can be with people. Or in a dream, they'll be well, just one of the I love part of the reason I love dreams is it shows like, oh, how am I in my way today? So many times your dreams will show you like how could life be better? But just with what you're saying, there'd be a dream where you'd go into a room and you're not really connecting with anybody. Like, I can think of somebody's dreams that I worked with in the past that they'd go into a room and there's really no connection. It's just people. And that manifested in their life just like the very sad thing, they truly don't have many friends. It reminds me of another phrase, somebody who'd worked with dreams came like, was frustrated because they were moving and none of it's almost a almost pause before saying this because it's a bit funny. She says, "But none of my Facebook friends showed up to help." It's like, well, you know, at work, like, not to bash Facebook, but it's like all social media can be good and bad and mediocre. It's what you make of it, right? So how are the real people, how are the real friends in there, and how do you really connect on a heartfelt level versus being just superficial? And dreams are one of the things that have helped me realize how separated I am truly from people and myself.
Yeah.
And getting the feeling opens up an intuition. Oh, I should probably actually spend time with this person. I should probably actually reach out to this person. And then you get what you give, and it's a give and take thing, right? Um,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, one thing for sure is Facebook doesn't replace that. No matter what you think, pro or con about Facebook or Instagram or TikTok, it doesn't replace the feeling of having someone at your back, someone who you know who's going to show up to help you move. I mean, it's a great example, actually. It's a different thing when you have people who will show up to help you move. Um,
I was thinking about what you said about the overwhelming thing and just how true that is, and how so many people say they're going to book a dream work session with me, or they're going to call you, or I say, look, I'm busy. Here's Bill's number. He's great. Or here's Sue's number for, there's so many women, like, just here, if you prefer a feminine presence, but they just never follow up. I think there's that fear of that safety, or once you've actually written the dream down, and it can be truly overwhelming. And
yeah.
the fear is, there's a great quote, I think it was a Vanderkolk quote. Goodness, I should dig it up. It's, from his book that if, like, if somebody is used to being on the downside of things, if you're used to losing at relationships and interactions, you're just reluctant to go into them again. You're just like, any interaction could be like a master servant or a top down or a dominant. You're just very, very reluctant to open the doors to friendship because there's a lot of people who've been hurt out there.
Right. Or even just the feeling that somebody might not show up. They, like you'll lay your soul bare and the person won't show up or won't see you or won't hear you in a way that's meaningful for you. So even if there's not the dominance authority thing, it's just all the question, always the question of like, will somebody show up? Nobody showed up for the move. Nobody showed up for this. You know, like I think a lot of people have experiences where nobody showed up, on a deeper level.
Sorry for it just reminds me of whenever, yeah, when I do call you, it's like, hey, Bill's actually good. It's
We
fine.
always have this joke. We're like these two old guys make the same joke every time we
Yes.
talk. I love that.
Hey, you actually showed up. It's so just resonating with what you said, that we do live in a world where a lot of people don't show up, if not in a meaningful way. Like, sometimes they're physically there. A lot of times they're not even physically there, right? It's,
Yeah. Well, that's this. Oh, you mean like physically, right?
yeah.
Right.
Which reminds me of I had somebody who told me a dream. They were at a supposedly a healing center of sorts, and they were surrounded by giraffes in the dream. And to them, this is what it felt like. It's like everybody was up there looking down at them. It's like there wasn't hand-holding nurses, and
Right.
it was it was giraffes. I mean, they weren't lions, at least, but it's that distance. Um, and I think it just helped them process that, "Oh, I really did feel distant and looked down upon." Um, it's so individual per person, so that doesn't always help when storytelling like this. But
Well, I think there's different variations. Like you said, lion, giraffe, whatever it is, it comes down to people not being seen. It comes down to people not being with. So a giraffe in that dream represents some version of somebody not being with them. But the part about the culture being so dissociated is that I do think there's a core issue. And I think this goes back to the safety issue of how do you learn to be with somebody? How do you learn to have a support network? I know you were one of the people that encouraged me in the intake form. It's like, do you have the support to be with your dreams? I think it's also like for people to know that you can go in from a distance. We don't always have to dive completely into whatever is coming up. It was a mistake we made or I made in the early days of this work is like we thought that if someone felt it, it would move it through them, which on some level is true or can be true, but it can also be overwhelming. It can also re-traumatize people. So part of the safety is how do we be with each other and be with dreams and be with what comes up in dreams in a way that's not overwhelming, that allows us to learn to be with it. Sometimes it's enough to just acknowledge it. Like, oh, this terrible thing happened to me that's come, this dream reminds me about. Or even like the giraffes, it reminds me of like how no one was there for me when I was sick, or no one was there for me when this happened. Or like you said, in someone else's dream, it might be a lion or something attacking them in some way.
yes, true. Well, there's Dobby. Hey, Dob.
We can do our Dobby hello. Hi, Dobby.
Dobby.
Good to see you. We've had many
Um,
guests today.
yes, he's just don't want him to. His heavy breathing, I thought, might take over the microphone. Um, but in what you're saying, get teary eyed thinking about this dream. I was working with somebody's dreams that had a ton of trauma in their life, and just relating to what you're saying, how a dream image and a dream feeling, I think can really help somebody. They told me this quite long dream with a ton of trauma. It took like just a lot of courage
Yeah,
for this person. Like you can never really know somebody, but once you open up their dreams, you realize, wow, you can
yeah.
never really know somebody. And at one point, um, a woman came to they were passing through a kitchen, and like we were 20 minutes into, I swear it seems 20 minutes into this dream, and the woman grabbed the dreamer in the dream and said, looked her in the eye and said, "None of this should have ever happened to you."
Wow.
And it was just like, oh, it just brought tears to my eyes. And how a dream, like if I could slow her down and get her to really hear this one moment of sanity in this dream. And I think this dream reflected her life. There's just trauma, 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 trauma. And there's one mentor, this one, what Carl Jung might call an animus, or spiritual people might call, like there's other, whatever this
Yeah,
one eminent presence was. It had a moment of sanity and a message for her. And it was just, it touched me, and I can only say how much it touched her. I don't know. I didn't get exact feedback, but I really tried to focus on that moment to get her to hear that message.
yeah.
That because people don't know that, right? People,
People
especially
don't
like,
know there's love in their dreams. I mean, and even us talking about it, that we talk, but
or
we're,
love in the world for that matter, or love
yep,
is just a word until you feel it, right?
yep.
It reminds me of that, what's the Tao of Pooh, I think, or there's one of those books that like they talk about what feeling it versus doing it, or yeah,
You
it's
were
just a
talking about
word.
quotes. Do you have a quote from that book?
I should I should have some quotes on hand. I'm gonna dig
The
up more
Tao of
quotes.
Pooh.
Yeah, it's a good little book.
I do think it's something that like people don't realize that. I mean, I agree. People don't realize there's love in the world, but I also think it's a foreign concept for people. Like people, I think people understand the idea of a nightmare. They understand the idea that dreams could be scary. I think people don't necessarily realize that like there can actually be love that comes to you in a dream. Where it comes from, I don't know. Like you said, is it archetypal? Is it God? Is it something else? Or is it some aspect of ourselves that's reflecting love back to us? But I do think it's something that's important to acknowledge that it is a place where, and I'm not saying it replaces having love in the outer world, but I think it's an important part. Again, this is an inner world thing, right? It's important to know that there's love that exists beyond just the physical presence of someone else in my life. So again, going back to my relationship, like knowing that makes it possible when Sue and I are going through a hard time. I don't feel bereft. I feel like, yeah, it's not fun. It's whatever it is. It's not a pleasant experience when Sue and I are having a hard time, but I still know a kind of love inside myself. I know a kind of tenderness or presence. And I think that's also a thing we maybe don't talk enough about dreams. We talked about nightmares in the last one. We've already talked about nightmares today, but we don't talk about like, I think particularly if you give dream time to be with the dreams, often something opens that's like that child energy that you're talking about, the joy or love or presence, or for me, like that elder man energy that can be really powerful.
Oh, speaking of, there was another one more email feedback I got about this was
Let's hear it.
somebody who's I had mentioned, like, I had read independently a number of the spiritual world's great texts just on the surface, and having the language, and this person said their Catholic upbringing, and then they went into their dreams, but their Catholic upbringing gave them a language. And, like, what are we talking about? Like, as I step back, even at the start of this podcast today, one of the feedbacks was just, like, what language are we using here? What are we saying? I'm supposed to be a medical doctor using actual evidence and studies and randomized controlled trials to use my data to back things up. And when talking about inner worlds, sometimes somebody who has had a background in the language of one of the religions, they can tap into this. They can find a language that fits with dream language and emotional language very easy and amazingly even. And I'm sure you found this non people who weren't raised in a church environment or in a spiritual tradition, the metaphors are still in their dream, sometimes screamingly so, and really obviously so. Excuse me, and people will say them, not even know they're saying them. And but this person specifically has new gratitude for their Catholic upbringing because they feel like they found so much truth to their dreams, and that rope to hang on to as they descend has been a lot of the language given to them by their Catholic religion. And even
Yeah.
this person had mentioned that the physical, actual rituals that they use, the embodying, the actual doing physical things within the Catholic Church rituals,
Yeah.
actually gave them like almost a body memory for when it happened. I hesitate to say this, but it's because it seems so profound to me. It happened in their dream, and
Yeah.
it's like, oh, well, then it was actually really meaningful when it happened in their dream. When they learned it in the church, when it was just a ritual. And I don't want to
Yeah.
say the word just, but that was their experience of it.
Yeah.
They could use words around it, but then it became so much more when they could tie when they made this link because they had a language. And yeah, no matter how much we talk, I'm gonna worry we're losing people in language. It's just yeah. So it's nice to have that feedback, that
Well, I mean, I just think a good example of that. I mean, I don't know what dream you're referring to, but even as you're talking, like you talked earlier about nourishment and being raised as a Catholic, we were taught that we're taking in the body of Christ. And when we're doing communion, we're sharing the bread, we're sharing the body of Christ. There is language in that lineage that I grew up in about letting in a different kind of that's beyond just the bread. It's not just like eating physical bread, obviously. It's literally the body of Christ in the Catholic tradition. So when you're brought up in that kind of a tradition, it's not such a stretch to think of an inner world. It's not such a stretch to think of nourishment and not just think of vitamins and minerals. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, you're talking about being at God's table. You're talking about being in a kind of presence and love that goes beyond vitamins and minerals. No offense to vitamins and minerals, but both. We can eat, we can be nourished physically, but we can also be nourished on some other level, whatever your understanding of that is, whether it's as an atheist, whether it's as a Jewish person or a Christian or a yogi, whatever your tradition. A lot of what I love about dreams is, at least in the way that we work with dreams, it allows you to have your own personal understanding of what that means to you. So for you, nourishment might mean one thing. For me, nourishment might mean another. For someone else, it might mean something completely different. There's no like preset, going back to the authority thing, like we're going to define what a child means in a dream or what food means in a dream or what nourishment means. What we're going to always do is like, well, how is that for you to feel nourished in your dream? What does that feel like for you? Or with the giraffe dream, like, what is that like for you that everything's above you, everything's distant? Like, what is your experience of that? And what is your relationship to that?
And at the same time, there are trends, right? There's people will have similar the number of dreams where there'll be a table of plenty
Well,
and
it's hard to argue with.
and
We all eat, right? We all
people aren't
eat.
eating. There's like the world provide I mean, there's horrible things happening in the world and some people are just scraping to survive and like many are just at any given moment. But when opportunities actually present, are we willing to seize those opportunities, which often shows up I would argue as food in dreams or a table with food on it. And it's amazing the number of times people don't eat, um, or pass by it or don't think they have a seat at the table, whatever that means. And it's really hard. Like if you don't have the two languages, or you talk about the body of Christ thing, like people will get lost in religious triggers or what do you mean literal body? But if you can actually speak both languages and know that this inner journey is just metaphor, like an energetic like it becomes far easier to talk about that and grasp that, especially for somebody who has religious luggage or has been harmed by the church or is reluctant to like if you can have these languages,
Right.
um it's helpful. You can think of this and not and see it on a different level and experience it on a different level and think, oh, like inner world, how am I experiencing this? And yeah, and how can it help me? And what's the message for me?
Yeah. Well, and yeah, and what does it mean to me? Like you're right, there are trends there, but it may be different. Like you said, for somebody, like the body of Christ metaphor might be something that's a complete turnoff. For somebody else, that might be their doorway in. And each person has their own doorway into their own inner. It's your inner world. It's not my inner world. For someone who's like, I mean, there are people who the only love they received was food, right? It's like, eat, just eat, and they might have a whole different. So being at the table, being with all that food, like, am I welcome here if I don't eat? Am I welcome here despite the fact that the only love I ever got was food? And so I have some sort of unhealthy relationship with food. Like, am I welcome here if I'm with all of who I am. And I think that's part of why it's hard to have a language because it's so personal to each person.
True, but at the same time, so just challenging you on this, Bill.
Go for it. Let's
So,
go,
so
man.
I'm with you, but at the same time, chances are that person who won't be able to nourish themselves in the world and on some level, and like, how do we get in? Sounds like a cliche statement. How do we get in right relationship to food, outer
Yeah.
world and inner world?
Yeah, for
And
sure.
so opening up the conversation. So I'm 100% agreeing with you, but the metaphor remains and quite consistent to a lot of people. And it's like, how do you, or me saying like a lion dream, you can have like Aslan kind of image of a lion as a god
Yeah.
figure in the C.S. Lewis, but or the ferociousness of a lion. But if you're too much of a lion and you're constantly tearing people apart in the outer world,
Right.
maybe like what do you need to
Or
see
you've
about
been
that
torn
lion?
apart. right?
or you've been torn apart. So what is it about, like, generally I'd say a lion is a positive thing to have, but until it's not. And what is right relationship with that lion? And how do we be with the lion in the dream in such a way that you're not torn apart, or you're not tearing everything apart, or you're reconciling it all? And the conversations can be extremely helpful. And it's amazing. These are just words we're saying right now, but oftentimes the person that dreams of the lion, they'll know immediately if they were the
Right.
one tearing apart, or the ones that were torn apart, or the ones that didn't know how to have that inner lion. And having these conversations is so helpful, uh, and specific to that person at that point in their life. Um, yeah, that it's hard to put to words right here, right now, on like
I
the
think you're
YouTube.
doing pretty well. I mean, I think it's a
Thanks. Well,
struggle. I think it's a struggle because it's different for each person. So it's hard to have a universal language. Like you said, there's commonalities in how we each relate. I mean, part of the invitation, I think, of dreams is for us each to find our own language. Part of the invitation is like to be part of the conversation. Make a comment in the comments and we'll respond, or like send something to Jake, send something to me, and we'll be in conversation about it and we'll discover what it means for each of us. Because what a lion or what food means to each of us may ultimately have some deeper meaning, but at the end of the day, I'm not sure. Like, what matters most is your own relationship to that experience and what comes out of that relationship, at least from
right.
my experience.
Can I talk about my bear dreams?
Please, let's go. I don't know why I'm suddenly saying let's go.
Hundreds of bear dreams.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Like, hundreds. And I remember one bear, I like, it helped to try and embody, and to try and, like, why, like, waking up, more bear dreams, more bear dreams, more bear dreams, and what is it? I remember one picture I painted, there was just a bear, and it was like a wall of bleeding raw steak stacked upon it, just like as far as the moon. Like, everywhere I just could kind of focused out, and it was just red blood raw, and just the bear and me. It's like,
So
and
there was
I
the meat, and then there was the bear,
no,
and then
the
there
bear
was
bear
you.
was in front of it. It's like bear was 10 feet away, 20 feet away. There was this wall of, like, bottom line, it was very intense, very intense, very red, very not easy to be with. Put it that way. Like, what does that even mean? I don't know. It's not easy to be with. And, but in a way, it just like, here, just can you see this? Okay. So one of my bear dreams, and I bear dream after bear dream, and eventually, I remember there's one where I'm in front of a screen door, and there's a whole bunch of fish. I'm inside with the fish, and there's a bear outside the screen door, and
If you're
it's like,
scared of bears, that's not the place to be.
you think the bear's not coming in. Like, on some level, I needed to be with this bear. Another one where I'm sitting on the tailgate of my pickup truck, and there's a bear in a camp chair with its feet folded sitting by the fire. It's like, Jacob, there's something you got to reconcile, because he ain't leaving. She ain't leaving. Whatever's going on here. But at that point, I'd gotten some comfort level with it, but I wasn't comfortable. But like, over time, as you actually provoked me to just like feel into what's it like to be the bear at certain
Yeah.
times, whenever it felt appropriate or not traumatic, for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
And I realized some of the things I needed was, it's like, what is a bear to me? And when I could embody that, boundaries. I didn't have good boundaries in my world. If you're around a bear's got no problem with boundaries. They've got territory. They will let you know their boundaries.
Yeah.
They roar once, and then they shut up. Like, either they either they'll let you know, or they'll whack you, and then they're gone. They don't sit forever. Like, that's,
Yeah.
and I could see in my world how I didn't have specific boundaries with communication, with personal space, with my patients at the hospital, and like, my schedule making. I wasn't good at setting boundaries, and I wasn't good at speaking my mind and then just being quiet. Like, if it was my wife or my kids, just like, speak your mind. What is it? Like, don't drone on, don't beat around the bush, don't be passive aggressive. Just say it. Stop. Done. Um, is much better for a relationship when you can speak your mind and then stop talking.
Yeah.
So it helped. I mean, those are two ways that seeing how I needed to be the bear, and at certain points, just be ferocious, be not be. It's very Canadian to say sorry and thank you, and there's the cliche ice hockey examples of toughness, but it's very, very right in the Canadians, like, sorry, I'll open the door for you. So like the passiveness is fully accepted in a lot of Canadian culture and especially Western Canadian culture. But that ferociousness that doesn't always need to be there, but sometimes should be there and needs to be there. And from
Elbows up.
elbows up,
Elbows up.
from protecting your livelihood, your family, your kids, your community, elbows up. I mean, the Bears got no problem with that. So I wasn't good at that. I wasn't good at sticking up for, I'm sure to my wife's chagrin, sticking up for my family, sticking up for things, not being present. So my many, many bear dreams, like eventually I was able, it just naturally came out in me. I got better at doing all of those things. And I don't know if I explained that very well, but I could go on in various tangents, but I've had so many, seems like a big influence on me, needing to have that energy.
Yep.
And
I think a
yeah,
lot of people can relate to that idea of like, I think there's something very archetypal, at least in the world that I grew up in, about bear energy. Like, I think people, at least where I grew up, they know what you're talking about when you're talking about having bear energy. Like, at least in the sense of like you're saying, of having boundaries. Like, don't mess around with me. Like, I think I think it's clear enough for today.
yes, something else will come up as soon as we finish here. But
Speaking of which, how are you doing with all this? Is this a good place? I'm thinking about winding down. You need anything
yeah,
else you
it's
want to?
just to say, like, just even talking about my own journey and bears, like, I almost need a moment to pause. Like, it's so incredibly personal. You feel stripped down a bit, talking about your own journey.
Yeah.
Yeah, I almost do need need a pause, but just for reflection. Otherwise, yeah, I don't know how long. I'm good either way, Bill.
I mean, I think we can stay with what you're saying for a moment. Like I think it's okay for you to pause. I think it's okay for you to. I do think it's a big thing. I think a lot of us have experiences of our boundaries being violated. A lot of us have experiences where we've made the mistake of violating other people's boundaries. And I think it's a big thing to like what you're saying about being with that bear energy and not a violent way, actually. And just like kind of this organic, primal way of like, I deserve to be respected and acknowledged. My space deserves to be respected and acknowledged. And I do think it's a lot.
It's wonderful when animals do come in dreams. It takes people out of this outer, like if they haven't dealt much with that animal in their outer world, it's much easier to start having a dialogue or to open up possibilities, for insights and feelings and thoughts when animals come in dreams.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you had any big animal dreams, Bill, that have influenced you?
You
I
know,
can think of one.
I've had whale dreams. Yeah, can you see my whale back there?
Yes.
That's the one I remember the most. I had a moose dream. I remember having a moose in my house. The whale dream kind of is in alignment with that first dream that I mentioned about being in the water. I had a dream where by the end of the dream, I almost felt like I was a whale among whales. I felt like I was one of the humpback whales that I was swimming with. And that was a pretty I think for me to like let in that it's okay to be with that part of myself. I have this very watery, flowy part of myself, and I think it was a big deal.
What does the watery flowy mean, Bill?
Like feminine, whatever that means, feelings, I get called a faggot a lot as a kid. I got treated a lot because I wasn't a guy's guy. I was just experienced the world in this other sort of like I think I
Then
was
you
off.
became a plumber. That's pretty.
But
It's not
like
flowy.
well,
Well, I guess
because I
it is flowy.
channeled all that energy into fixing things. So that ties in with the earlier conversation, right? Like, no, you're talking about like controlling the water, right? Yeah, or maybe not. But you think about plumbing, right? It's like let's put all that like water energy into a pipe. My whole job is to keep that water under control. I don't think that's a coincidence.
May not be.
And I was great at customer service because people loved that I would show up with a kind of love and care for their house. I wasn't your traditional plumber because I would show up and I would make sure your floor didn't get dirty and I would pay attention to you and the kids and the pets while I was doing what I was doing, because it wasn't, even though I was good at fixing pipes, a lot of things in my life have never been that sort of like defined for me. A lot of things have been flowy in that sense of like it's not just about the pipes. It's about like showing up with the person whose pipes are broken. And it's a part of myself that it's taken me a long time to get over, feeling shame about that part of myself. It's not something, yeah, it's not something I was taught was okay. The pipe fixing part was okay, but the other part, the part about loving being with kids, the part about loving being with nature, the part about crying easily and being sensitive and those different ways was something it took me a long time to be at peace with. I'm not sure if that answered the question or not, but
Weaving all over. It's good. Part answer, part not. Part we always
just
seem to weave
just
into.
swimming in the ocean with this. I always look at the wheel now. It's like it's diving into my back. I kind of like that. It kind of feels like my tail.
Good. Yeah, I think this is a good place to wrap up, Bill.
Yeah. Thanks for taking the time again. Appreciate you. Appreciate people, anybody who's gotten this far, especially. Thanks for being with us. Thanks for being in the conversation. If you want to be more part of the conversation, like I think we can grow language together by being in conversation. So leave a comment or send us an email or text if you know us in that way. And we'll do our best to speak to it as best we know how.
Sounds perfect. I agree. Feedback is good. Thanks,
All
Bill.
right. Thank you,
Okay.
Jake. Good to be with you.
Great to be with you.